Well, he's doing exactly what a backup quarterback should do, right? He gets an opportunity and he steps in and he's been winning some games for him. So 3-0 as a starter now. I can't tell you, Steve, it was so funny. Well, it wasn't funny, but when Dak Prescott got hurt, the reaction here in Dallas, I mean, it was the entire air came out of the balloon. Monday morning, it was just, there was a really down vibe all through the town. Everywhere you went that day, running errands, it was just, everybody was just so depressed. And I think Cooper Rush over the last two games has really kind of brought back that life into the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So real happy for him. I think he's one of those guys that is completely overlooked all the time. I mean, he got put on waivers, at the end of training camp this year. And thank goodness they were able to get him back. So real happy for what he's done these last 2 weeks.
Is there any controversy when Dak comes back? I mean, I guess they can afford to take the time. Is there a scenario where Cooper Rush is playing so well that you have to continue to play him?
I'm a believer that you don't lose your job due to an injury, especially if you were one of the starters, one of the best players at your position in the NFL. It's going to be hard for Cooper Rush to kind of create that type of controversy. But remember, that was how Dak Prescott got his opportunity, is when Tony Romo got hurt and Dak Prescott came in and played as well as he did his rookie year. So I don't see that scenario repeating itself. I think that Cooper Rush will do exactly what that backup quarterback is supposed to do. Come in, hold down the fort till the starter gets back. Don't let the season go down the wrong track. Keep everybody in a position where you're still viable for the playoffs, and he's done just that the last two games.
And even before that, it was a little bit different scenario, but Romo taking over for Bledsoe. How important is that backup quarterback position?
It's unbelievably important. And we were really blessed during my time with the Dallas Cowboys. If you go back and look at who we had in our number 2 spot, because we did have injuries. There were times when Troy missed some games. And, even back in '89, we had Steve Walsh, who was drafted, number 1 in the supplemental draft by Jimmy Johnston at that time. We had Wade Wilson. We had Bernie Kosar. We had Jason Garrett. We had Rodney Peete. We had a number of really, really good backup quarterbacks in case that situation happened. And I think it's one of the more underrated situations around the league. And sometimes during our games, you'll see a backup quarterback come in that doesn't really fit the offense that the starter is running. And I think that creates another issue for the play caller, for the guys executing the game plan. So I think one of the big things we've seen now, especially with these really dynamic quarterbacks coming into the NFL, is if that's the route you're going, you better make sure your number 2 can execute 85, 90% of that offense that your starter is doing. And it's not a huge transformation if you have an injury at that quarterback spot.
And from the Cooper Rush perspective, this could open up a whole another avenue in free agency next year. Just having the audition to show that all this guy's done is win as a starter. This is big for everyone.
Absolutely. Look at Colt McCoy. Look at Chase Daniels. There's a number of those guys that are out there that are so valuable to clubs because they know if something happens, worst case scenario, they've got that comfort zone of having one of those guys being able to step in. And it's an opportunity for Cooper Rush to elevate his status into that area. And there was a number of guys, through the 90s that not only perform well when they get the opportunity as the starter, but then also in the quarterback room. They bring that number 2, that experience that they've had for a younger quarterback to answer the questions, to be there for film study, to do everything that starter needs to get ready. And on game day, on the sideline, always in conversation. So there's been a number of guys that have made that number 2 quarterback spot into a very, very successful career. Yeah, just want to see what the response is to the Giants. Everything's been positive up until this point. They had a great opening season win down at Tennessee. They followed that up with a victory in week 2 against Carolina. So now they've had their first little bit of adversity in week 3 and the game last night against Dallas. So, where do they sit right now? How do they bounce back? I really want to see how Kayvon Thibodeau kind of pans out. Azeez Ojulari, in that Wink Martindale scheme, they haven't had an opportunity to really kind of get into that yet. I'm interested to see how that works this week against Chicago. Then you always want to see what those steps are for Daniel Jones. Is he going to be that guy? Are they going to retain him? And I think the same thing can be said about Chicago. Where's Justin Fields in this whole process? We had them in the opener against San Francisco, a big upset win in some pretty crazy weather with all that rain in Chicago. But again, validated everything that Matt Eberflus was putting in during the course of training camp. that week 1 victory, but then they followed up a tough game against Green Bay in week 2. Found a way again this week. So it's 2-1 and 2-1. And I don't know how many people really thought that the Chicago Bears versus the New York Giants in week 3 of the NFL season was going to be 2-1 versus 2-1. So it's going to be interesting to see which one of these teams that has a new head coach and is kind of trying to find their way through this new rebuild, who takes that next step and moves out to 3-1.